Hohem sent me this new lightweight foldable gimbal to try out, the iSteady V3. Hohem has been innovating again and has come up with a unique new gimbal feature. If you already own a Hohem gimbal, you might have one of these, a little remote control. Hohem tell me they've been selling a ton of these remotes and they're going like hotcakes. In response, the Hohem team have put their heads together and they've come up with this. Here we have all the normal gimbal controls that we're used to. Joystick, mode indicator, mode button, record button, and so on. But this little panel detaches and now you have your remote. So you don't need to buy a remote as an extra. And as well, you don't have to carry it around and lose it in the corner of your bag somewhere. It'll always be here if you need it. The iSteady V3 follows on from the previous version, the iSteady V2. But apart from the detachable remote, what else is new? So the V3 now has an extendable selfie stick handle. So in that respect, it matches the gimbals like the DJI Osmo Mobile 6 and the Insta360 Flow. The V3 now comes with these built-in tripod legs, which is similar to the Insta360 Flow, but I think these are a bit more sturdy. They're made of metal and they don't really wobble at all. I am a fan of the Flow, but the inbuilt legs do wobble a bit. So I've never actually owned a V2, but having a little look at the images of the V2, I do think that the V3 has a nicer, sleeker design. The V2 has that basic kind of cylinder for a grip, but the V3 is shaped to fit your hand. So it's more like the DJI Osmo Mobile 6. So this version is heavier than the previous version. This one weighs 420 grams, and that compares to the V2's weight, which was 260 grams. But you kind of expect that with all this extra metal that they've had to put in for the extendable handle and these tripod legs. The V3 doesn't have a sport mode like the V2. The sport mode is used to make the gimbal more reactive to your movements. Personally, I won't miss that because I actually never use it, because if I want to be more reactive, all I'll do is just take the phone off the gimbal and I'm just going to use it handheld, and that actually gives you more control anyway. Considering the features it carries, the Hohem iSteady V3 is one of the most compact gimbals around. So let's compare it to the Osmo Mobile 6. So you can see that the gimbal is shorter and it's also actually simpler to unfold. It's just like one movement, whereas the DJI, you've got to kind of unlock it and then unfold it. And as well, the whole gimbal is contained here. With the Hohem 6, you need to add the tripod legs and you've got the detachable quick mount. So I do like the detachable mount, but on the other hand, if you don't like having all these extra bits to keep track of, then I'd say that the V3 is ideal, because everything that you need is right here and it's completely self-contained. So I found the best way to mount your phone with this gimbal is vertically, with the AI tracker and fill light on the left side and the cameras of your device at the top and facing away. If you want to shoot horizontally, you can just double tap the M button, the mode button, and the gimbal rotates and the tracker or light is now on the bottom. So at first I actually thought this was a bad idea, but then thinking about it, it's best actually to have the weight underneath, as this is going to help to stabilize the camera even more. Because if you have it on the top, the motors are going to have to work harder to sort of keep it up there. So actually I do think this is a more sensible place to put the light. So there's this wheel on the left hand side of the handle and you just need to long press it. And then you can use the wheel to adjust the brightness. If you double press the wheel, it switches between the 3 different color modes. So you've got like a sort of daylight, and then there's a slightly colder one, and then there's also a warmer one. So again, this is all independent of the Hohem Joy app. So apart from being a fill light, this is also the AI tracker. And this also works independently of the app, so you can easily use it for live streaming with a different app. Or if you just simply want to use your phone's native app for filming. So you switch it on, and then you just wait for the red light, followed by the fill light flashing twice. Stand at least half a meter away, and then make the OK sign with your hand. When the light goes green, the gimbal will now start following you around. And actually I found the tracking and the motion of the gimbal to be nice and smooth. As well, if you move out of frame when you return, the tracking is going to pick you up again and it's going to start tracking again. Now if you want to stop tracking, you just show the palm of your hand. By default, the gimbal places you in the center of the frame, but if you want to adjust your position in the frame, make this gesture until the light blinks green. Move your position to where you want to be in the frame, and then you just make this same gesture again. So the light's going to stop flashing, and now the gimbal is going to start tracking you again, but it's going to keep you in this new position. So you can actually turn this AI unit around so it can face both ways. For example, you might want to switch between the front and rear cameras. So that way you can use the rear cameras or the front cameras, depending on what you're doing. And if you want to remove it, you just use these little catches on the sides. Then you can just turn it, and then when you put it back on, just make sure that it clicks into place. And once you have this tracking running, you can now use the detachable remote to start and stop recording. Because if you're recording yourself, this means that you don't have to stop the tracking every time that you want to start and stop recording. So I do think that the AI tracker and the remote control kind of complement each other pretty well. And you can also use the joystick to move the gimbal up and down, left and right. And you can adjust the joystick speed so that the pan or the tilt is faster or slower depending on your preference. And you just go into settings, and I actually set this to low because I prefer to have these kind of nice slower movements. And then you can create solo shots like this. You can try sort of walking into shot as the camera tilts down. So as I'm walking here, I'm actually controlling this with the remote as I walk into shot. Press the M or the mode button twice to switch between landscape and portrait. So again, you can use all these features without using the Hohem app. Now when you remove the remote from the gimbal, you're going to get a green light under the joystick. And this is the connection indicator light. And if this light is off, that means there isn't any connection. So you've lost the connection. Now as well, when you pull out the remote, you're going to see these three lights behind it. So the blue one is the Bluetooth connection between the gimbal and the remote. And the middle one is the gimbal battery level. So the right one, which is green, flashes when it receives information from the remote. So you can see that it's sort of working. And this light will actually switch off if the connection with the remote is lost. On the side of the remote is a little button. So if you press this 2 times, it's going to recenter the gimbal. If you press it 3 times, it will rotate the gimbal 180 degrees. And when you press and hold this button, it goes into locked mode. And it's going to stay in locked mode as long as you hold down that button. And when you release, it goes back to the previous mode. So if you press the mode button once, you can cycle through the modes, and the mode indicator on the left of this panel or the remote shows you what mode you're currently in. So we've got PF for pan follow. In pan follow mode, the gimbal follows your left to right movements only. And this is good for tracking shots if you're following a subject, for example. In pan and tilt follow mode, the gimbal follows your pan and tilt movements. So this is good for kind of classic cinematic sweeping camera movements. In point of view mode, the gimbal follows all your movements, even on the roll axis. And this also allows you to create sweeping camera movements. But this time you can add a roll movement as well. So you're going to get a less classical shot, but it's more like a kind of special effect. In locked mode, the gimbal doesn't follow any movements. And this mode is great for simple forward camera movements where you're moving in a straight line. So use this mode, for example, if you want to get a shot crossing a bridge, or maybe you're walking along a straight path or a street, anything where you want to go in a straight line and you don't want the camera to move left or right. And by the way, if you want to get the most cinematic video from your gimbal, then you should check out my 9-day course on Patreon. Links in the description. Press the mode button 3 times to switch into Inception mode. And this mode rotates the camera to create a smooth barrel roll. And now with the remote, you can be in the video as well. Just use the built-in tripod legs to place the gimbal somewhere stable. Take the remote and move into position. Press the M button 3 times and then press the record button. First of all, the gimbal just moves the camera into position, so you don't want this part of the shot, and then it starts to roll the camera smoothly in a circle. So at this point you can start walking towards the camera, and yeah, you should get a pretty interesting shot. Press the record button once to start and stop recording. Press it 2 times to switch between photo and video mode in the Hohem Joy app. And press 3 times to switch between front and rear cameras, also in the Joy app. And finally, long press on the record button to switch off the remote. Now if you do this when the remote is on the gimbal switches off as well. So you can just long press to power back on. So it's basically another power button. The buttons on the left, top and bottom are your zoom in and zoom out buttons. And again, you do have to use the Hohem Joy app to zoom, so this isn't going to work with other apps. And you can also use these buttons as roll buttons. So press the joystick 2 times. So you have to kind of press it in like a button twice. And when you do that, these zoom buttons now light up, which means that they're now in roll mode and not zoom mode. So you can now press these buttons and it's going to make the gimbal turn smoothly on the roll axis. So you can use the remote to control the fill light too. Long press on the joystick. Again, treat it like a button. You just press it in, hold it, and the fill light goes on. And at the same time, these zoom controls start flashing. So you can now use these buttons to adjust the brightness of the light. And to switch the color of the light, just double press the zoom control. And then long press to switch off the fill light. The extending handle is useful for a number of different shots. You can use it like a regular selfie stick. So, just to hold the camera at a distance. But you can also use it to add some new and fresh shot styles to your videos. And that's really going to add some pro-level production values to your work. So remember that this kind of joint at the end of the stick can be adjusted for different angles. So here's 3 shot ideas using the extended handle. Number 1, I'm calling a slow-mo selfie. If you switch to a higher frame rate, extend the handle, and then use the joint to angle the camera towards yourself. Start recording and walk along. Now if you want it to look like someone's filming you, try not to look at the camera. So this is like the basic shot with the camera at the front. But if you get confident, you can try a side angle. And the real advanced version of this shot is to sweep the camera from the side to the front as you walk. And if you turn your head in the opposite direction of the camera movement as you're recording, that kind of adds an extra dynamic to this shot. And number 2 is a low angle up. Position the camera low to the ground and adjust the camera angle so that it's aiming upwards a little bit. Now start recording and walk along. So this shot works best when you have a subject to track and some interesting features close by. Because if you just had an open field, for example, then all you're going to see in the background is sky, and that means that you don't get a sense of movement. Number 3 is a high angle down. And in this shot, you want to position the camera above your head and adjust the camera angle so that it is aiming down slightly. Again, you can track a subject walking. And as we can see the ground this time, you can use this shot anywhere. But another cool version of this shot is to circle around a subject. So for example, you could use this in a music video or a travel video.